Okay students, let's continue the problem number 3.1. We are moving to the second step now, where we are going to satisfy the HP condition. You can watch in the sheet here. So we have completed SP1 by drawing the top and front views. Now we are going to the HP condition, HPC. Now, what is the HP condition in this problem? The axis is inclined to HP at 45 degrees. This is the axis, okay? This should be made inclined at 45 degrees to XY line in the front view. So, I am going to rotate this like this in the clockwise direction. And the other condition is that this edge should be on HP. The edge A1, B1 should be on HP. So, I start by taking that point A1 dash B1 dash on XY line. Okay, so B1 dash A1 dash. This is on XY line. Now, because this point should be on XY line, I'll start by drawing this edge first. Okay, if the axis is to be made inclined at 45 degrees to XY, this edge also will be drawn at 45 because both are parallel to each other. So I am going to start my front view by drawing this line first, inclined at 45 degrees to XY line. Same length, okay? And now you can draw the base. The base and this edge are mutually perpendicular. So you can put your protractor here, mark 90 degrees and draw the base, the same length. This is of 35 mm dimension. So I am drawing an edge, I am drawing a line, I am drawing the base here exactly perpendicular to this line. Okay, now I can complete the rectangle. Now I am going to name the corners. This is going to be C1 dash, D1 dash. This is C dash, D dash. This is B dash, A dash. As they are, you mark. You also mark the axis O dash, O1 dash. Axis should be a thin line. Now when you are showing the inclination, show the inclination for the axis. Okay, you can show it here also. This is should be at 45 degrees. So some of you are not marking the dimensions when you make the drawing. That's very important. If you don't mark the dimensions, this is a second dimension, this is the third dimension, you'll be losing marks in the exam. Yes, now when you move to the top view, it's very important. You need to follow certain rules here because when it is a solid, as I mentioned already, all the edges will not be visible to the observer. Now this is the position of the observer. Now the rules that are to be followed are what are called as rules of visibility. So I have mentioned the rules of visibility in the next sheet. You can watch them. These are rules of visibility for prisms. Now in a prism you will have the top face and base. Whichever is nearer to observer, top face or base, that will be visible. In other words, that should be drawn using solid lines. Solid lines means continuous dark lines. So if the top face is nearer to observer, the base will be away from observer. Okay, so we are going to start by drawing the top face first, since it is nearer to observer. In this case, it is a rectangular prism. The top face will have 4 edges. All the 4 edges will be drawn dark. Now what is second step? After projecting the top face, you will project the base also, and then you have to identify the boundary of the view. I am going to demonstrate it when I move to the problem. So the second step is to identify the boundary of the view and draw it using solid lines. Make sure, an important note, the boundary of any view should always be drawn using visible lines or continuous solid lines. So the boundary is always visible. The third step, now for the base or the top face, whichever is away from the observer, Some lines will be visible, some will be invisible. Now what are the lines that are visible? What are the lines that are invisible is what you have to decide. The lines that coincide with the boundary are visible, which we call them as outer lines. I have mentioned here, outer lines are visible, inner lines are invisible. Now what are outer lines? Outer lines are those lines that coincide with the boundary of the view. Inner lines are those lines that do not coincide with the boundary. So the inner lines will be invisible. In other words, they have to be drawn dotted. So these are the three steps that you have to follow when we draw the top view now. I will once again repeat. The first rule says, among the top face and the base, whichever is nearer to observer will be projected first and drawn using solid lines. Then you project the other one also, the base, and identify the boundary. And the boundary will be drawn using solid lines. That is second step. The third step, the base or the top face, whichever is away from the observer, all the lines will not be visible. The lines that coincide with the boundary are visible. In other words, they are drawn as continuous lines. The lines that are not coinciding with the boundary, which we call as inner lines, will be drawn as dotted lines. So you will get more clarity when I go to the problem and demonstrate it. Okay. Now I'll come back to the problem. I'm going to satisfy these rules of visibility and draw the top view here. Now I'll do it step by step. Now what the first step? The first step says in rules of visibility, out of the top face and the base, whichever is nearer to observer. This is the position of the observer. In this case, the top face is nearer to observer and base is away from observer. So I must project the top face first down and then draw it visible. So I am going to project the points A, B, C, D. Draw the locus of the points A, B, C, D. Wherever they intersect, you can name the points. This is A, this is B, C, D. So according to the first rule of visibility, all the four edges are visible to the observer. So I must draw them using continuous solid lines. That's it. This is first step in the rules of visibility. After doing this, I must project the base also. There are four more points here. Project them down. Identify the points. This is A1, this is B1, C1 and D1. Now we come back to the rule number 2 of rules of visibility. What you have to do is you need to identify the boundary. Boundary means the outermost portion of the view. In this case, this is the boundary. Outside this you don't have anything. You call these lines as boundary lines. The second rule says the boundary has to be drawn using solid lines. So that is what I am going to do now. I am drawing the boundary of the view. These are also called as outer lines, outermost lines of the view. So this is the boundary. I have made it dark, visible. Yes, now coming to the third rules of visibility. It says for the base, all the edges will not be visible to the observer. What are visible? The edges that coincide with the boundary are visible. There are three edges that are coinciding with the boundary: A1 D1, D1 C1 and C1 B1. There is one more line left out, which is A1 B1. We call it as inner line. That is not coinciding with the boundary. So according to the rule, that should be drawn invisible. So I am going to draw it dotted. That's it. You have satisfied all the three rules. The view is ready. So you yourself can see, as you are looking from the top, this edge which is on HP is not visible to you. That is the edge which I made dotted here. Now you can complete this view by drawing the axis. I am drawing the locus of the points O and O1. Project the point O and O1 from the top. This is your O. This is O1. So this should be shown using a chain line. Chain line also is a thin line, not dark line. Axis should be a thin line. That completes the view. So there is one edge here which is invisible to the observer. It is A1, B1. This point is A1. Done. I have satisfied my HP condition. That is done. Now the last condition to be satisfied is VP condition, which says the edge of base which is inclined to VP at 30 degrees. Which edge of base on which it is resting? A1, B1 is the edge of base on which it is resting. That should be drawn inclined to VP at 30 degrees. This edge of base A1, B1 is in its true length. As it is, you have 35. And you are given the true angle as 30 degrees. So, what are you going to do? You are going to rotate it like this or the other way. Okay, let me rotate like this. And see that this edge A1, B1 is drawn inclined at 30 degrees to XY. Okay, so what I will do is A1, B1 and AB are parallel to each other. So I'll start by drawing AB first, inclined at 30 degrees to XY line. This is 30 degrees. I will mark it later. So I will start by marking A and B on that. This is A, this is B. Now I will draw these two lines, A to D1, B to C1. You can measure this length with compass. This line is drawn perpendicular to AB because this angle is 90. Similarly, this line is also drawn perpendicular to AB. Same length, whatever length you have here. And then you can complete this rectangle. So this is your D1, this is C1. So in fact we have drawn the boundary here, boundary of the top view. Now you can measure the distances and mark the points one by one. Okay, A to D you can measure, mark it here. Similarly B to C, same dimension. This is a solid line here, this is a solid line here. So I am also making it solid here. And then you have the point A1. This is B1. This is a dotted line, so it will remain dotted here. Okay. Now you are left with the axis at the midpoint. Draw a thin line first, then mark this measurement, take this measurement from this edge to here. You can mark O. Similarly from this edge to here, O1. This should be drawn as a chain line. Now the condition given is A1, B1 is inclined at 30 degrees to HP. So I will show the angle for A1, B1. That's important. Okay, though you started by taking this as 30, but when you are showing, you must show the angle for A1, B1. That's it.